William H. Gear from Menasha, Wisconsin. 1943, November, I was drafted. I got a letter from a group of your neighbors or something. It read, it selected you. First, in November, we had to go to Milwaukee for the physical. And then we came home, we stayed overnight. And then we came home, and then in December, we got on the bus at the Menasha post office and went to Camp Stoneman. I know Fort Sheridan. Well, when we got off the bus and marched in, the first thing there was a bunch of guys that got there a day ahead of you. They were all yelling needle bait. We didn't know what that meant, but then we stayed there overnight, and we had to go through the warehouse, and they give you a couple of barracks bags, and as you walked along, they put your clothes in there. They take one look at you and put something in a bag for you. And then when you got everything, you were taken back to a barracks. And then you put your uniform on, and then you took your clothes and boxed them up, and they were sent home for you. The last thing you took a shot in the arm. I don't even know what it was. But about a half hour later, you couldn't raise your arm. You had to have a friend to kind of go with you so you could help him with his jacket. Well, we was there a couple weeks because we got a pass to go home at Christmas time. And I know the first week I was there, I had to get up at 5:30 and go on KP. We worked all day on KP, had to feed they were about 1,700 at each meal. And you could wash the trays or anything that had to be done. By the time you got cleaned up from one meal, the last thing you did was mop the kitchen floor. And then the crew was right there for the next meal already starting. I was in limited service. Well, when I went through, my eyes are 20/20, but we went a little further, and the doctor come with that spyglass and looked in my right eye. He says, you ain't got 20/20 out of that eye. Because I had what was called a lazy eye that never developed. We had a chance to vote. We had a list on it, and we could mark what we wanted to do. And the medics was right on top, so and the infantry was on the bottom. So we didn't sign up for that. I was with a guy from Menasha, Norton Sanders. He was the one that says, sign up for the medics. And so we both went, and we both signed up, and I went to the medics, and he went to some other outfit. He went over to China, Burma, India. And we went south to Abilene, Texas, Camp Barkley 60th Medical Replacement Retaining Center. Well, it was just tar paper shacks, like a garage, good sized garage with wooden floors. There was classrooms all around, and we just it was a regular, just first aid course, like. Then we had to, of course, we did the other Army things too. We had to do KP and guard duty and work in a latrine. Every day you had something else to do. That's what it says. When you was in a Boy Scouts, they always said the best soldiers were Boy Scouts. I had taken first aid. I was on a first aid team and everything, so I liked it. Well, at Camp Barkley, that was for about 10, 12 weeks, basic training. And we got on a train and went up to Springfield, Missouri, to O'Reilly General Hospital. It was a big hospital. Well, first we had to go to school. We went to school, and Well, they said the training we had was equal to about 2 years of pre-med, and we did it in 3 months. Yeah, we had all doctors that we took on, like you had to study the skeletal system and the blood circulation and everything. We took notes in that. It was good. I liked the medics. That was the last part of our training. We worked on, I remember I worked on different wards, and the one I was on, they had fellas that were wounded in the back and paralyzed, and you had to write. Some of them they had on a canvas frame, and they could put one on top and buckle them and turn them around, turn them over, so they didn't develop ulcers. It's hard to remember, all that. But I just remember those ones that were paralyzed, and it was kind of hard to get them comfortable. A lot of them, they wanted but they could cut the nerves so they wouldn't have any pain, but most of them didn't want to do that. They wanted to see if they was going to get better. We went back to Camp Barkley to finish our basic training. There we had to take the 25-mile hike, and we had to go on bivouac for a week. Well, you had to have a friend, because when you only had a half a pup tent, you had to button them together and put them up. And we got on a train and we went east till we got over to the coast and Charleston, South Carolina. That was that was quite a historic place too. We were all divided up into units, and I was in the 467th Medical Hospital Ship Platoon, and we had 15 enlisted men. We had one doctor and one dentist. That was our unit. And we stayed there because all the hospital ships that came from overseas docked there, and we used to have to go and help the patients get off. A lot of them had casts and that, and they had to be carried off. So we did that for a few weeks too. Those ships were Liberty ships, all painted white with the Red Cross. And they all carried about 500 patients, each one. Those ships all had names after the battles in the First World War, like the Chateau Thierry and the Argonne and the Saint Mihiel. But those Liberty ships they could build one of them in 4 days. At first, the Germans were sinking the ships, and then after a while, the Americans built them faster and they could sink them. But I met a fella there, and he showed me around Charleston, and his son was in one of the military schools there. I remember going over there, and I met him, and we went to a football game. And so I got to see some of Charleston. We were there so long, then we got on a troop ship and headed out towards Europe. As we pulled out of the harbor and everything, it wasn't bad, but when you got out, it started getting a little rough. I know when we were on the ship, we walked around the back and first, and you couldn't find a place to sit down. People were all over. So we went up to the bow and looked around the different parts and that. And about an hour later, we took another walk to the back, and you could sit any place. It got so rough, everybody got to feeling sick. So they were gone. Right in the New York Harbor, and boy, that was a big ship. We thought, when we get out on the ocean, why, this would be a piece of cake, be like a little boat ride. Boy, we pulled out, and when we got out on the ocean, when it started to get rough, why, that ocean pitched that Queen Mary around like a peanut, like nothing to it. You'd stand on one end, you wouldn't think that thing would move, but you watched the other end, and boy, she'd raise up about 20 stories and then drop back down. But that wasn't too bad. But the ships we was on, why, they were smaller, and when it dipped down in a wave, 15, 20 feet, and they'd come up, and they'd throw that water clean up over the top of the ship. I know we were up on deck and walking around. We had our raincoats on and helmets, and the guy on the ship, he says, "Get below." He says, "You want to get washed overboard?" Well, they say we had 16,000 people on there. It cost the United States $80 a head to get them overseas. And as you go around, we walked around the deck every night. There'd be different places where guys had instruments they were playing and doing stuff. Every ship that we was on, the Red Cross always had a room, and you could go there and get writing paper or books to read, or they used to go around to every hospital I was at, they all had, Red Cross had places, and they come around with a cart for stuff for guys to read. I remember the mess hall, everything was boiled potatoes and sausages. They'd bring them, they had them in a dishpan. If you got in a chow line, and there was a lot of people ahead of you, all you had to do is make some noises like you're having a problem, and everybody disappeared. Because I know the one ship I was on coming back, I had the fella that was taking care of the mess hall, he couldn't handle it, so I don't know how I ever got on that. And after a while, they found another guy that didn't get sick. Him and I took care of the whole thing. And I know when they'd have a meal, why, they'd have a GI can in the front and one in the back. They had all these canvas frames. That was a bed we had. They had rooms where they had beds and stuff. They were all bunk beds. As you get out, and you get further out, you get in a Gulf Stream, and that's always calm, and it's always summer out there. We were all by ourselves, just a troop ship. We followed that Gulf Stream right up to England. I don't remember where the first place we landed, in Liverpool, or I think the first time, and we went to a place in England called Hereford. England had hospitals all over. Well, then we got assigned to a ward in the hospital, and we had to go there, and there was always, if it was a surgical ward, you had to help keep the ward clean, and then you just went around with the doctor and watched them when they changed the dressings and stuff. They had a nurse there, and she'd have to keep the records. Each patient had a record. Most of them, the first one were paratroopers. They all had them boots, their paratroop boots. Guys were all going nuts. Everybody wanted paratroop boots. But I talked to the paratrooper, and he said, them boots, he says, were all right in fair weather. He says, but you get a little cold or snow, he says, they were no good. When we were in England, we got a chance to go to London. Stayed there for a couple days. I walked around the whole of London, and over on the side, there was nothing but a pile of brick. It was leveled off by the Thames River. But the thing to see, I saw that Charles Dickens Curiosity Shop. And we walked right up to it and looked in there. All that was left was the front wall that was braced up from the back. There was nothing back there, but all they kept was a wall. When we were there, at 5 o'clock at night, you could hear them bombs coming. They'd run until they run out of gas, and down they'd come. And when they were first coming over the channel, they had the guns, and they were trying to shoot them down. And they'd hit them once in a while, but then when it got through, and the motor shut off a little while later, boy, it hit that island and shake the whole thing. Oh, the whole London was bombed all over. We went remember we went to the theater once in London, the White House Theater. We didn't go to any pubs until we were up in Birmingham, when they got a ship full of patients to be evacuated. We went and we got on that ship and came back to the United States, just a troop ship. They had sick and wounded on there. And we landed up in Camp Miles Standish, up near Boston, up in